Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Whiskey Review. My name is Jeff, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Shin non-age stated Japanese Mizunara oak whiskey. So this is a Japanese blended whiskey. From everything I can tell from online and everything, this is a blended malt whiskey, meaning it's 100% barley malted, but it doesn't necessarily come from one distillery. Normally, if that's the case, it would say single malt whiskey, and in this case, it just says malt whiskey. So I'm assuming it's blended. I'm not exactly sure on the details of that. If anyone knows for sure, you can leave some comments down below. I'm always looking to learn new things and kind of fine-tune what I know and just learn more about what I'm drinking. So this comes from the Shinobu Distillery in Japan. That's in Niigata on the west coast. The master distiller, his name is Ken Usami, and a little bit more about this. It's 48% ABV, so that comes in at 96 proof, so just kind of under that 100 proof bottle and bond. This is non-chill filtered, and there are no additives. So I believe in some Japanese whiskey, you can have coloring and maybe some flavoring added, and it would still be considered Japanese whiskey. In this case, there's none of that, so it's just the whiskey. You know, kind of what's in the bottle is what you get. And again, this is non-age stated, so there isn't a minimum age statement in this bottle, in this whiskey or this batch. So I believe with Japanese whiskey, I think the youngest it can be is 3 years to be considered Japanese whiskey. It's the same with Scotch and Irish. With American bourbon, that's 2 years. So again, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 3 years for Japanese whiskey. So the youngest has to be at least that. I would assume there's at least some older stuff in here, but with the non-age statement, we're not really sure. This bottle also was gifted to me from my dad for my birthday. So I want to thank him and thank him for giving me an opportunity to try something that I haven't before. With reviewing this, we're going to look at the color. I'm not going to grade it, but then we'll review the nose, the palate, the finish, and the value. And those will be on a 0 to 10 grading system. So looking at the color here, I would say this is it's a lighter color. It's not going to be like your dark amber like an older bourbon would be, let's say. Japanese whiskey, or most of it at least, is going to closely resemble Scotch, because the two guys that kind of brought whiskey to Japan, I should say, or introduced Japan to whiskey, they learned in Scotland from Scotch master distillers. So it would make sense that a lot of Japanese whiskey is going to resemble Scotch in that way. So again, 100% malted barley, just like a lot of Scotches. So it's going to have that lighter color because they're using usually second fill, third filled barrels. You're not going to get a lot of that color imparted from the charred oak that you would in, say, like a bourbon or something that's using a first fill cask. So again, lighter color. That doesn't necessarily mean a younger whiskey, especially for Scotch, Irish, and Japanese. All right, so let's go to the nose here. All right, so the first thing that kind of hits me up front is like a stewed fruit. Now, it's kind of got like almost like a pear or a plum. I don't want to say pie fruits because that could be a lot of different things, but just a stewed fruit, not necessarily tropical, not really like a green apple like a lot of Scotches have either, but again, I would say pear or plum if I had to pick something. Right now, there's also some grain in there too, which I get from a lot of 100% malted barley whiskeys. And again, I think that just, again, comes from the grain being used and the fact that the barrel doesn't impart as quite much into these as a bourbon does. A lot more of it's going to be coming from the grain. In this case, barley, so it's got kind of that kind of a little bit funky, kind of just dusty straw kind of grain thing going, a little bit of grass maybe. And then there's also some vanilla and some spices as well. I would say, kind of clove, cinnamon, nutmeg, things like that. Some of the same baking spices. All right, so let's go in for a taste here. We'll check out the palate. I shot this video last night didn't turn out the way I wanted, so I'm reshooting it again today. I have had some just regular Buffalo Trace a little bit before this, so my palate's a little bit warmed up already as far as the ethanol and everything goes. So I don't have that initial alcohol burn or shock to my system or my palate. So I know when I tried this yesterday, it was the first sip of whiskey that I'd had all day. And that was the first thing I got, is just a little bit more of that alcohol burn. But now that I've kind of gone in and warmed up, I'm getting a lot of those same stewed fruits that I mentioned on the nose, kind of in the front side of the palate. So yeah, it's pretty soft and delicate, but with it being that 48% alcohol, you can tell it's not a 40. It's not just super light. You can tell it has just a little bit more alcohol in there, but it carries forward the flavors very well. It's carrying forward those spices, like I said, clove, nutmeg, vanilla, a little bit of cinnamon. It's definitely fruit forward, I would say. On the palate, I'm getting a little bit of that, kind of that oak. And again, I haven't had very many Japanese whiskeys. I know Mizunara oak, it's been used since the 1930s, I believe, by Japanese distilleries to give it a little bit different flavor profile than, say, American oak. I'd have to look into see like what characteristics are attributed most with Mizunara oak. But this one kind of has not quite as caramel and brown sugar like American oak does, especially charred. This has more of kind of a fruity, a little bit of a tannic kind of leather quality going on to it, which isn't, in my mind, necessarily a bad thing. It's just different, than what I'm used to. All right, so now I'm gonna grade the nose. I'm gonna give this one a good 7.5. I'd say it's definitely up there as far as better than average. I don't know if it's the craziest one that I've ever nosed before, but it's pleasant. All right, so now I'll take one more sip and then we'll go over the palate grading here. Yeah, to me, I really like this one. Again, all of this is just personal preference, right? So everyone's got different palates. Everyone's gonna like different things for different reasons. I tend to like either sweeter or fruitier bourbons and scotches and malt whiskeys. So it all just depends on my palate. Sometimes it depends on the day. I'm debating between a 7 and a 7.5 here. Not that it's a big difference. We'll go 7.5 on the palate. Okay, so now we'll talk about the finish, which is essentially the flavors you get kind of after you've drank it that linger around for a little bit. And also the length too, because that kind of plays a part of it. I would say it's mostly kind of the oak and the spice that kind of shows up on the back end and that sticks around the longest. I wouldn't say it's a long finish by any means, but I'd say it's about medium. That fruit still sticks around for a little bit. It doesn't completely go away right away, but the oak and the spice kind of hang around the longest for me. It's definitely not bitter or overly tannic or anything like that. But again, it's not the longest finish either, so I'll say we'll give this one a 6. It's not bad by any means, but I've had some other whiskeys that finish a lot better than this. All right, so now we'll talk about the value. Now, this bottle is around $60 in my area, and I believe that's probably about average, I would say, for the country. As far as the availability goes, I believe you can find it in most of your big box liquor stores. Some of your smaller liquor stores, like your mom and pop shops, you might not be able to find them there. The Shin also comes in a 10-year age statement and a 15-year age statement, and I believe those bottles are, I think, around $80 and $100 respectively. Now, I haven't seen those by any means, so I don't know how rare those are or how easy to find those are. But this one being a non-age statement, I think it's probably the easiest one to find out of all of them. Being a $60 bottle, non-age stated, I do appreciate that it's non-chill filtered, because in my opinion, non-chill filtered whiskeys tend to have a little bit more, not only flavor, but a little bit better mouthfeel. And that's something I didn't talk about too much, but the mouthfeel on this one, it kind of coats the mouth pretty well. It doesn't taste very thin or anything like that. And a lot of that is usually attributed to the non-chill filtering kind of status or aspect of this whiskey. I'd say if you like Japanese whiskey, if you're looking to get into it, $60 in my mind isn't a whole lot to spend, considering a lot of your single malt scotches and things like that, you know, can easily get up into 60, way plus, you know, into the hundreds. So $60, I know that's a lot to some, that's even a lot to me sometimes, but I'd say for a good Japanese whiskey, non-chill filtered, that isn't 40 proof, I'd say it's pretty good value. And the flavors are all there too. So I'm gonna give this one a good 7 for value. So that brings us to our total, which is 28 out of 40. Now that's very respectable. I think, especially for the price point, it's not the cheapest whiskey you can buy out there for Japanese. There's some other ones I know that are out there, either blended or otherwise. Suntory Toki is kind of a good introductory one that I've had that I liked, a little bit lighter than this one. Again, for 60 bucks, it's not gonna break the bank for a lot of people, and I think you get quite a bit for this one. It makes me wanna try the 15 and the 10-year ones for sure, because I think those would pack even a little bit more flavor, perhaps. Again, thanks for watching, guys. I'll try to get a new video out once a week going forward. You know, it's been a little while since I've made any review videos, so I'll link my Instagram if you want to check out my Instagram as well. I'll link that at the end of this video. And thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Cheers.